It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1 FM, and Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. When last we talked with Tom Clavin, we were walking the dusty streets of Dodge City with Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp, and we're actually going to turn around and go back the other direction a couple of years and talk about Wild Bill Hickok. The book is called Wild Bill, The True Story of the American Frontier's First Gunfighter. Tom Clavin, good to talk with you again.
Oh, same here. Glad to talk to you.
Oh, Dodge City was such a wonderful experience, and then when we saw this, that you were doing Wild Bill Hickok, I said, we have to do this, and boy, you came through. There's a lot of material out on Wild Bill, just like there is on everybody in the old American West, and there's a lot of myth-busting or myth-overcoming that you must do in order to find the true story, isn't there?
Well, there is. I wanted to find out what some of the tall tales were and what some of the facts were. And not so much because I wanted to, tear anybody down. I mean, certainly didn't want to tear down the images or legends of Wild Bill Hickok. But what I had experienced with the Dodge City book about Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp is that when you find out what the true stories are, they are at least as intriguing, if not more intriguing, than the legends and the exaggerations and the embellishments. And that's what really got me going with the Wild Bill book, because there are a lot of legends out there, a lot of myths out there. But he was really a fascinating person, and the factual information that backs up some of his adventures, to me, that makes somebody even more fascinating, because what you're reading about that person is indeed true, not just made up by somebody else.
You take us along on the journey of his life, and we're enjoying that when all of a sudden, they say everybody needs a good press agent. He found one inadvertently, and he actually embraced some of the myths about him, didn't he?
He did. He was certainly not looking for publicity. He was not looking to become a celebrity, but at the time there was a very popular publication called Harper's New Monthly Magazine, and a reporter there found Wild Bill out on the prairie and interviewed him, and then published the accounts of Wild Bill's adventures, some of which were true, some of which were not, or at least very much exaggerated. And when the article was published, especially to the readers back east, it was a revelation. Like, wow! Suddenly they had this. Wild Bill became the image of the plainsman, of the American frontiersman, of the person blazing the trails after the Civil War. And he could have rejected it all. He could have just gone off into the mountains or something. But he sort of embraced it. He realized, there's not much I can do about it. I might as well enjoy it and go with it.
He sure did. But before he ever got hooked up with the writers and the myths and everything about him, he had the actual real adventures, and so many of them, surprisingly for me, because we hear so much about the myth of the West, but many of them did actually involve battles with Indians.
They did, and Wild Bill was, in a couple of ways, he was early in his life a scout for the U.S. Army, and part of that job was not only finding out where the Indians were, but many times trying to outride them because they found out where you were too. So that was kind of a problem. Yeah. And then right after the Civil War, he again resumed being a scout for the Army and a plainsman. I mean, Colonel George Custer was one of the people he scouted for, and he did have many of these adventures out of the plains of encountering Indian tribes. And in some cases, they were peaceful encounters, but in other cases, there was a war going on, and Wild Bill was part of that war as a scout for the U.S. Army. So he had quite a few tough scrapes, and in addition to the adventures he had while being a spy for the Union Army behind Confederate lines during the Civil War.
Many, well, there were times when he actually did get shot up a few times in his lifetime. Where did Bill Hickok get his skills, though? Because he was universally recognized as somebody who was great with both hands with a gun.
Well, for one thing was that he grew up on a farm in Illinois, and he took to guns. He worked chores for other farmers, made enough money to buy him first a rifle and then a handgun. And initially, that was a way for him to go out and shoot some game and turkeys and antelope and bring them back to help feed the family. But he had a talent for shooting for guns, and a real interest in them. So he practiced and he worked at it really, really hard. Not because he had the intention of becoming a gunfighter, but he enjoyed it and he wanted to be good at it. And so by the time he did get to the American frontier, he was the head and shoulders above a lot of people. A lot of people on the American frontier who carried guns couldn't shoot them that well, didn't really know how to use them. When Wild Bill he showed up, he could use guns with equal accuracy with both hands.
Yeah. Pretty amazing guy when you come right down to it. We're talking with Tom Clavin. The book is Wild Bill, the true story of the American frontier's first gunfighter, and it's a tremendous read. Really, really enjoy this story. One of the things about Bill Hickok, whose name wasn't really Bill, was there was another Bill in his life, a younger man by the name of Bill Cody.
Yes, but who eventually became Buffalo Bill Cody, and they were very, very good friends. And you know, people might think, oh, that's probably just stuff that was just made up about the American West. No, Cody and Hickok were very good friends. There was a 10-year age difference, and Hickok first met Cody when he was only 11 years old, and he was about to be beaten up by this bully, and Hickok intervened and told the bully, you know, if you harm that boy, you're not going to be able to sit down for a month of Sundays. And the man, like many others who encountered Hickok, backed off because he could be a very intimidating person. And so Cody felt obligated. You know, you sort of saved me from saved my life, definitely a severe beating. And as it turned out, a few years later, when Hickok was in very trapped in snow with a small army contingent, it was Buffalo Bill Cody that led the rescue party that found him. So he reciprocated years later by saving Hickok's life.
Absolutely. It's just that another part of this amazing yarn about Wild Bill Hickok. Calamity Jane is another one, and the myths have grown up around their relationship down through the years. Not exactly enamored of each other in terms of the romance that we've been led to believe, were they?
It was kind of one-sided. Now, Calamity Jane is a fascinating character, and I really enjoyed researching about her life and writing about her. But it is a myth that she and Hickok had this great romance. She was infatuated with Wild Bill. You know, she was one of many that's portrayed in the book. Women who found him fascinating, but Hickok was not interested in her. In fact, when he first met her, Hickok was newly married. The woman who was really the love of his life, Agnes Lake, a woman from Cincinnati, was the country's only female circus owner and impresario. And that's the woman he loved. That's the woman he married. And then he met Calamity Jane. He didn't want to have anything to do with her, but she was fascinated with him. And it's kind of an eternal irony that if you go out to Deadwood, South Dakota, who's buried side by side but Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane?
I have the feeling he wouldn't have been thrilled about that at all.
He's still rolling over in his grave.
All right, let's get to Deadwood as we're almost running out of time here with Tom Clavin. Bill Hickok had sort of an idea that something wasn't right when he was heading into Deadwood for the final stage of his life. He had a premonition, didn't he?
He did have a premonition. There was a couple of very close friends of his that he was spending some time with, California Joe and Colorado Charlie Utter, and he said a couple of times that he felt that he was never going to leave Deadwood alive, that something was going to be happening. And they would just dismiss it, or you're being some kind of morose, come on, cheer up, have another glass of whiskey. But as it turned out, Deadwood was the place. There was a lot of truth to the sometimes been portrayed in the movies. One of the rare times that Bill was playing poker, did not have his back to the wall, which is what he preferred. And the cowardly Jack McCall snuck into the saloon, came up behind him, and shot him and killed him. It's interesting to note that when Hickok was the undefeated champion as far as being a gunfighter, because nobody ever defeated him face to face. The only way he died was somebody had to come up and shoot him from behind. Yeah.
Until that time, though, he was such a tough guy. And you describe one episode where these six fellows come at him in Deadwood. And what a story that is, and how does that build into what we romanticize about that time period?
Well, it's true because Hickok was a tough guy, but only when he had to be. His code of honor was, and he did have a code of honor on the American frontier. So there is a lot of truth to that mythic aspect of him. But I will not bother you. I'm going to treat you the same way you treat me, sort of a golden rule kind of thing. And he only resorted to either using his fists or his guns when pushed to it, when he had to defend himself or defend somebody else he cared about. And that sounds like the subject of myth, but that's what makes Hickok so unique, because he lived the myth. He was the myth, and he was the myth and the reality at the same time.
And we learned right away that this is a really likable guy, and he was well-liked in his time, if not by those who would try to face him down in a gunfight, but certainly by the people around him. Bill Hickok was a really, really good guy to be around.
He was a good guy. He loved children. He was very loyal to his friends. His friends were loyal to him. He was a fun guy. He had a really good sense of humor. He enjoyed being in the saloons and talking with people. And he wasn't an extrovert in the sense that he was always looking for people to talk to or companionship. But people were kind of gravitated to him. They found him fascinating, the way he dressed, the way he spoke, the jokes, the story. He was a good raconteur, the stories he told. So he was a well-liked guy. And it was unfortunate that there was one guy that did not like him very much, who killed him.
Yeah. Oh, I love the story, too, about him being an umpire in a baseball game.
Oh, I'm glad you picked up on that, because that is, again, one of those things. Who knew? But Hickok liked baseball, and when he was living for a time in Kansas City, there was a club called the Antelopes, and he was invited to umpire their games. And who knew? Wild Bill Hickok, baseball aficionado.
It was so much fun. You talk about diversions and heading down an unexpected street. Well, that was it in this book. It's called Wild Bill, The True Story of the American Frontier's First Gunfighter. Tom Clavin has been kicking around the dusty streets of Kansas again for us, and we're glad of it. Tom, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you. My privilege.